time, space, and timelines. That's what we're going to be dealing with today. And this is part 3 of our course, Soul Evolution, Multidimensionalism, and Time. In part 2 of this course, the previous part, we dealt with the multidimensional nature of the universe. This part 3 will expand further on how space, time, and timelines work in the context of the holographic nature of the universe. We said, in our case, we experience our reality in harmonic bandwidth 1, which is dimensions 1, 2, and 3. A harmonic bandwidth includes 12 frequencies of light and sound that form an harmonic, just like in music. These 12 harmonic frequencies form the basis of a density of reality or a hologram. Here we can see this depicted in what is called the musical spiral of frequency, color, and light. And we will see that in each harmonic there are 12 notes. So starting at C, count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then we're back to C. This forms an harmonic of light, which is the colors, and sound, which are the notes: C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E sharp, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, and then back to C. You can see the shape of the spiral is called a Fibonacci spiral because the ratio between each note or each color is identical, and it's 1.6 approximately. We learned in Soul Evolution that each cycle of 12 has 4 reality fields or harmonic bandwidths to pass through, also called densities or harmonic universes. So we have dimensions 1 through to 12. Each of these dimensions has a color demarcated, and each color in this spectrum is the same as the colors that represent our chakras. Our conscious soul bodies must traverse all 12 dimensions of these 4 harmonic bandwidths to return to source. Now let's look at time, space, and timelines. What is time? At the outset, I should make it clear that time is a man-made construct. In nature and the universe, time as we know it doesn't exist. In nature and the universe, there are only cycles of the present. Past and future don't exist. Everything and all events only happen in the present. Time was invented by the controllers here. How did they do that? First, they knocked the Earth's natural rotation cycle off its 90-degree angle to the plane of rotation around the Sun. We will learn more about this in a future course, The History of the Earth. The reasons they did this were many. They wanted to change and damage Earth's natural energy systems and grid lines, ley lines, so that Earth would lose its natural abilities to run higher frequencies in the Earth's grid lines, so that D5 frequencies could not be run through the Earth's energy grids. They wanted to create a mini-cycle of time so that they could control humans who they considered to be a backward species and use them as slaves in their mining activities. Now, the frequencies of waves operate in cycles, so that if they could break Earth away from the natural cosmic cycles, they could recycle Earth's populations from their natural and normal eternal state and recycle humans through a series of limited time cycles where they would experience birth, life, and death, and not remember who and what they are, thus disempowering humans. The natural cycles around the sun became the cycles we know as summer, autumn, winter, and spring. Prior to that, these cycles of summer, autumn, winter, and spring didn't exist. The fallen ones wanted to set up the kingdom of the gods in order to divide and conquer humanity, so that they could control Earth's populations, and one of their weapons was to create time. By introducing the concept of past and future, they could keep humans preoccupied with these realities through guilt and shame from the past and fear and anxiety of the future. In order to have humans worship and serve them, they intended to keep humans traumatized and confused, and with feelings of inadequacy and unworthiness. They provided humans with their first religions, that is, the worship of the sun gods and idols. These early religions then evolved into current-day religions. These religions were based on the climate cycles, and the myth was created in the northern hemisphere around the winter solstice, when the sun would reverse its journey southward and begin to head northward again, heralding the movement towards spring. So the sun was born again on the 25th of December each year, and the people celebrated this with a feast, usually after a blood sacrifice to appease the gods, as some religions still do today, where they attend a mass, where they drink the blood of the sun and eat his flesh in a mass ritual. The control of time became central to the controller's strategy for controlling Earth's human populations. All sorts of myths were born about the gods and how to appease these gods. Central to this theology was that man was separated from God, each other, and the rest of the universe, and were inadequate to save themselves, and required a savior outside and apart from them to redeem them and pay the price for their redemption. This left humans believing that they had sinned and were inadequate to deal with and take responsibility for their sins, and they had to have these sins redeemed in order to go to heaven, nirvana, etc. This is nonsense and conflicts with the universal law and protocol. In the universe, we are not here to correct or deal with the past in this lifetime. We are only here to provide for ourselves the experiences we agreed to have before we incarnated here. Our thoughts and emotions, our words and deeds are recorded in the Akashic records and are reviewed there prior to the next incarnation. Neither the past or the future exist in reality. All our experiences are only experienced in the eternal present. Prior to each incarnation and after the review of the Akashic records, we enter into a new soul agreement or contract, where we agree to give ourselves and have the experiences we need and go through this test in order to refine our souls. And then we create for ourselves a holographic reality where our thoughts and emotions, words and actions can be refined. This process is called the evolutionary journey of the soul, where we experience cycles, also called rounds. A full cosmic cycle is 25,500 cycles, years, and rotations around the sun. 25,500 cycles is the number of cycles it takes for our solar system to make a full rotation from the galactic center and back again. At the end of the 25,500 years, there's a cycle called the stellar activation cycle, also called an ascension cycle, where all the portals of all soul beings have full potential to open and trumpets a mass essential potential for all soul beings. During this cosmic cycle of 25,500 years, there are 4 ascension opportunities, each quarter of each cosmic cycle, that is every 6,375 years. These quarterly opportunities offer soul beings the opportunity to ascend to a higher harmonic bandwidth, if they have accumulated and activated sufficient soul codes in their soul bodies, in order to hold higher frequencies in their soul bodies. If they haven't done so, if they are ill prepared, they won't be able to pass through the portals. We have to ask ourselves if the concept of time as it exists here serves mankind or just further enslaves them to a system that is self-defeating and regressive. What is space? In the universe, space doesn't exist at all. There is just the illusion of space, created through a 3-dimensional holographic projection. In fact, all space is in the same space called eternity. Quantum physicists acknowledge that all time is simultaneous and all space is in the same space, but they haven't figured out how it works yet. Time and space are created through the cycles of the waves of light and sound that are also responsible for the hologram of reality. Time and space only exist in the holographic reality and not in their natural cycles. What are timelines? Timelines are the recorded sequence of thoughts and emotions, words and actions that are recorded in the Akashic records. Each timeline has a specific frequency, based on the frequencies of our thoughts and emotions, words and actions. And the higher the frequency of our thoughts and emotions, words and actions, the higher the potential probability and possibility of that specific timeline. The timelines of potential, probability and possibility will be determined by the frequencies of our thoughts and emotions, words and actions. In order to move our conscious holographic experiences onto a higher timeline, we have to take responsibility for our thoughts and emotions, words and actions. Our subconscious minds have been programmed to stay in the lower frequency bands. By face-locking our conscious minds in the lower frequency bands of guilt and shame, the past, fear and anxiety, the future, and feelings of inadequacy and unworthiness that they bring in the present. By holding our subconscious minds in the lower frequency bands, we don't experience the timelines of potential, probability, and possibility. I reiterate, in order to move our conscious holographic experiences onto a higher timeline, we have to take responsibility for our thoughts and emotions, words and actions. It works like this. We choose the timeline we are going to experience. It's like going on a journey with many crossroads. So we need a map to navigate through the various timelines. Our choices along the way determine the potential, probability, and possible destinations for our experiential reality in our hologram. There are 3 different timelines, and they are activated separately, and I will explain. There are timelines of potential, timelines of probability, and timelines of possibility. The frequencies of our thoughts and emotions activate the timeline of potential. What does it activate? What it does is activate our soul energy bodies and attunes it to the potential frequency along a particular timeline of potential. It's like an appliance in our homes, say a food mixer. It has potential power that lies latent until it is plugged into an energy source and switched on in order to do its work. By being led by our subconscious minds, we keep making the same choices and expect a different outcome. It is only when we take responsibility and change the choices we make that we can project ourselves onto a different trajectory of experiential reality along a new timeline. Timelines of probability are determined by our values and standards that guide the potential new choices along a different trajectory. So we have to examine our values and standards that motivate us and will determine the probable trajectory and outcome of the timelines of probability. We do this through an examination of the values and standards that are acceptable to us, and then be determined to be guided by those, rather than the standards and values of the subconscious mind that we have automatically been accepting and implementing. I have spreadsheets available for self-evaluation of both our emotions and values, and these are freely available. We are the ones responsible for our own outcomes along the timelines of potential, probability, and possibility. The timelines of possibility are determined by our attitudes. If we hold exclusive attitudes, we automatically limit possibilities. For instance, if we have an attitude of only loving that which conforms to our biases, we automatically exclude the possibility of unconditional love. So I'll say that again. If we have an attitude of only loving that which conforms to our biases, we automatically exclude the possibility of unconditional love. This is very important to understand so that we can realize that we are the ones who exclude ourselves from experiencing higher frequency timelines and outcomes. Practicing attitudes of mastery is an arduous and difficult task. That is why I have a webpage exclusively devoted to this topic. You should spend time there to develop your attitudinal skills, and we will also be running our next course on the attitudes of mastery. I hope this information will assist you to navigate your own experiences into a higher and better timeline, so that you know that you are the controller of your own experiences.
And the UFO material. Well, tonight I thought I would talk about the convoluted universe material, because if you've read those books, there is so many unusual concepts and theories that I get so many questions about. And a lot of times at the conferences, I don't go into the deeper stuff because I don't want to go over the audience's head. And you know, a lot of that material it is very deep. So tonight I thought, well, maybe you're ready for it. We'll find out. Because if your eyes glaze over, then I know you're not ready yet. But if you're reading the books, at least you're thinking, and maybe you'll understand, and it will stir up a lot of questions. Now, I'm supposed to stop at 4, but this is the end of the conference, so we're getting into a lot of questions. We'll go over, because we get all these emails, and people keep coming up to me even here and wanting more explanations on some of these theories. Okay, but you know, when I started out in the 1960s, nobody was doing any of this. That's why they said I was a pioneer, because there was no metaphysics, there was no New Age. Very few people in the Western world even knew anything about reincarnation. There was no past life therapy, there was none of that. It's hard to believe that now, especially for the younger people, but we lived in a very innocent world, I guess. But there wasn't any of that when I got thrown into this. So I've been at the forefront, I guess you would say, since the beginning. I had no one to teach me how to do this, so I invented my own technique, and that's what I'm teaching all over the world. We call it now quantum healing hypnosis. But I'm doing that all over the world. But in the beginning, it was all past life regression. And I did a lot of that because of the history. I loved the history. And I wrote several of my earlier books dealt with the history. But then things began to happen, and I began to get these other things coming in. See, now it's no longer simple. We hardly ever get normal past lives anymore, but back then that's all it was. But then I began to get these concepts that were coming in that were upsetting my belief system. Now you remember, I don't channel. Everything I write about comes from my hypnosis sessions with clients. And I've had done 45 years of this now with thousands and thousands and thousands of clients. And when many of them keep saying the same thing over and over, you know there has to be something to it. And that's why I'm the reporter, and I'll take bits and pieces of different sessions to put the puzzle together. But I remember one of the first things that came out when we were doing this was the idea of simultaneous time. And, you know, I was quite comfortable with reincarnation, linear progression. I had taken many people back through 30 different lifetimes, and I would jump them back by 100-year jumps. That was the way I worked. And then these ideas began coming in, and I would think, oh, wait a minute, I got this all figured out. I know how reincarnation works. I don't want somebody upsetting my belief system here. You know, messing with what I know it. I'm not going to have it changed. But then I got to thinking, if you think that way, you're no better than the church that says, do what we say, believe what we say, and don't ask any questions. So when these ideas began coming in, I thought, well, maybe I should at least look at them and examine them. And one of the first ones that happened when I was doing the Nostradamus material was the idea of simultaneous time. Because, you know, I've got 17 books out there, and I don't know how many of you have read them all. But in that book, we were speaking across time to Nostradamus while he was alive, living in France, writing the prophecies. And it got very complicated. How can we be speaking to him while he is alive? He was not a spirit, he was not dead, he was living his life. And he began to tell me, it's all now. And here I'm trying to figure this idea out. So I'm always asking lots and lots of questions. I have a terrible curiosity. I've got to know everything about everything. So when I got these, I was able to ask questions to them. That's what I call them. It's the source of all knowledge. that I've got contact with. And we call it the subconscious in my classes, but actually it's higher self, the oversoul, the higher consciousness. And I first thought I'd stumbled on it later in my work, but now when I go back and read the older books, it was always there, but I just didn't know it. But I found out if I ever had a question, I could ask them. And I said, okay, you know, simultaneous time means everything is happening at the same time. And I said, how can that be? We know you start out as a baby, you grow into a teenager, you grow into an adult. How can that all be happening at the same time? Doesn't make any sense. They said because you're using the wrong terminology. It's not happening at the same time, it's existing at the same time. You see how the words are very important in the way they explain things. They said, we will never know it all while we're alive. It's absolutely impossible. There are no concepts in the human mind to totally understand it. Although Guy Needler has really bent the, he's trying. But they said it's not the brain, it's the mind. That we don't have the concepts. We'll know it all when we die, but when we're trying to understand it now, we have to do it with the filter of our own understanding. And they said many times there are no words to explain the concepts they're trying to get across to me. So they do the best they can, and many times they invent words, turns nouns into verbs and verbs into nouns to get the concept across. But they said, you can ask questions and we will give you the best we can. And I always say, give me analogies, give me pictures, something that I can understand. But it's the idea that there is no time. Well, there is no time anyway, but we're trapped in the concept. Time is an illusion. And the ETs have said it very clearly. They say mankind will never travel in space until it gets out of the concept of time. That's what holds you to Earth. And they said we are probably the only species in the universe has found a way to measure something that does not exist. So leave it to us. But if there is no concept of time, we have invented it because, you know, we go day to day, hour to hour. Our whole lives are built upon it. So it's very hard to get away from the idea that time does not exist. But with the idea of simultaneous time, it means everything that's ever happened in your life, childhood, baby, adults, everything is all happening now. And it's all still there. Now, I know with the hypnosis that we do, we can go back and revisit those childhood times, and I've had people become those children again. But that means it's all happening now, and all of your past lives and all of your future probabilities are all now, which is very hard for us to understand. But somebody gave me a very good example. They said, when you make a phone call, and you're in America, and you're calling London, 6-hour time difference. Well, when you make the phone call, are you waiting 6 hours for the person to answer you each time you ask a question? No, because when you're talking to them, they're receiving it and answering you at the same time, even though there's 6 hours and a half a world away between us. That's a good idea of simultaneous time. It's all now. Everything is happening now. We realize it when we travel so much, that it's the hours difference, and sometimes it's a whole day difference. We come in on yesterday, and then we're coming in on tomorrow in different countries. We soon realize time doesn't exist. It's a mess anyway. But this is one of the things we have to get used to. There is no such thing as time. Everything is happening now. Now, when I began to get all of this, the information I'm getting now, if I had gotten it 30 years ago, I could not possibly have understood it. I would have just thrown it against the wall and saying, no, I can't understand it, and I would have stopped my work. But in their wisdom, they don't give it to you all at once. You can't handle it. They give you spoonfuls. Give you a spoonful of information, digest this. Then give you another spoonful of information, digest that. You don't give a baby a 3-course meal. You give a baby milk, cereal, chopped vegetables. You don't give a baby a steak. So that's what they mean. You have to be given it to you at your rate of progression. Otherwise, you won't understand it. It'll go over your head. So spoonful by spoonful, they were feeding me little pieces of information, different concepts that I would eventually begin to understand. That's when I began writing the Convoluted Universe books. And each one has gotten more and more complicated. If you read those, I always say start at the first one because it's simpler as it goes along. And when I got to the end of Convoluted 3, I said, well, I think you've told me everything there is to know. There's nothing else left that you can tell me. And they said, oh, no. There's more, there's a lot more. And that's when we began to get more material that went into Convoluted 4. I'm now working on 3 more books. I have more than enough for Convoluted 5. But each time they give me another concept that I've never heard, and I have to adapt to that. I'm going to try to cover some of these, and maybe, I know we're going to have to go to questions after we finish because there's going to be too many things hanging out there. I always say that the Convoluted Universe books are for those people who want their minds spent like pretzels. Okay, I was trying to think which one to go with first. I had them listed in the program, but if I don't cover them all, we'll just have to go back and you may ask questions about those. I know I want to get to the backdrop people because that's what everybody's been asking about. But okay, one thing has to do with parallel universes, parallel dimensions, parallel lifetimes. And when I first got this concept, it was a real mind bender. Now, you know, to keep it simple at first, everything is energy, everything. So when you make a decision, you come to a crossroads in your life, you've got to make a decision. Do I get married? Do I get divorced? Do I take this job? Do I go to this school? You're trying to make a decision which road you want to go down. We have these crossroads. And you know, either way you choose, your life is going to be different, won't it? If you marry this person, or you don't, or if you get a divorce, or if I choose this job, should I move? Your life will be different no matter which direction you go. So you're trying to make a decision. And you have a lot of energy going into making that decision. Then you finally decide, okay, this is the way I'm going to go. All right, what happens to the other alternate decision that you could have taken? What happens to that? It also is created. And another you is living out that other decision. And that gets a little complicated for people. You're living on this life and you're focusing on your decision you made, but another you split off over here and is living that other life. And we're not supposed to know about it because it would be too complicated. That's what they say, you can't know it all. Imagine how complicated it would be if you knew about these other parts, having all these other experiences. I have clients that come to me and they'll say, you know I'm living another existence in another city and I have another family even. I occasionally peek in on them and they have said this is possible, but you're not supposed to do that because it would cause interference. Because the other reality is not aware of what's going on over here. Now, I hope I'm setting you on what I'm going to get here. These are a lot of complicated concepts. That's the simple way of explaining this. It can also get much more complicated. If it splits like that, it also means every time you make any decision of any kind, it will split again, and again, and again, and again. To where finally there's hundreds of yous living all these different realities. I think you understand a lot of this, don't you? Absolutely. Because he's getting it too. But I know it's hard for our minds to accept, so we don't dwell on it. That's why I call the books mind candy. Read it, well, it's interesting. Then you got to put the book down and go on about your own life. Because otherwise it can really scramble your brain. And I've also been told that if you don't put much energy in that other decision, eventually it will dissipate anyway. So the one you make now is the one you have chosen. That's going to be your life you focus on. Don't worry about the other one. I know there's a woman, I'm another person who never got into any of this. I don't know if she's sitting home knitting and watching TV or what. I don't know what she's doing. But my other me didn't get into any of this. I wish her luck wherever she is. But this is an interesting idea, and these are real concepts. And there's something for you to think about anyway. But this means there are all of these other parts of you. So it doesn't matter, you make the best decision that you think for your life. But this is where we get into parallel universes, parallel lifetimes. And they keep talking about dimensions. There are thousands of dimensions. The scientists keep talking about fifth dimension, sixth dimension. There are thousands. Many of these dimensions, there will only be a slight difference. And you're constantly going in and out of these other dimensions all the time. You don't notice it unless there's something that gets your attention. I had one woman who was a college student, and she said she came out of her dormitory one day, and there was a lot of construction going on right in front of the dormitory. They had the barriers up and the orange cones, and they were digging up the street. Well, the next morning she comes out of the dormitory, there's no sign of any construction at all. That's what I mean, unless something happens to catch your attention, you're not even going to notice. You're constantly moving in and out of these. Another one might say, they see this beautiful tree on the block where they live in. The next day, there isn't any tree. We have crossed over just that little bit into the other dimension. It begins to show you reality is not at all what you think it is. Everything is energy. Everything is an illusion. I had one client that said she was out jogging and she saw an airplane coming in, and it was coming in through the treetops, big airliner. And she could see it coming in. She said, it's going to crash. She could see it about a block or so down. It's going to crash. And she turned around and ran back to the house, turned on the TV to see if there any news about an airplane crashing. Well, there wasn't. So part of what she wanted to have the session was about, what was that? they said she had crossed over into a dimension where there was an airport over there. And it didn't exist in her normal reality. But see, you don't stay there because it's not your reality here. You all know when you put something down, an object or something, your glasses or car keys, you go back, you can't find them. Then a little later you go back and they're there. They have gone into this other dimension and come back. When that happens to me, I always say, guys, put it back, I need it. But we had one story too where a woman, she lived in an apartment building. She went out of the apartment building onto the street, and it was back like in the 1950s. The dresses, the cars, like she had gone backwards in time into the 1950s. And she's walking down the street, nobody's paying any attention to her at all. And she was getting scared. But she went back into the apartment building and went back up to her apartment. Everything came back to normal. I hear lots of these stories. People on trips, and they'll be out in the middle of nowhere on a road, and they find a gas station, and they stop to get gas, and they say, boy, that gas is cheap. And they fill up their tank, and they go on and find a little hotel that's really low price. They stay the night. Well, the next day, when they want to go back to the gas station, there's no gas station. And if they try to find that hotel again, there's no hotel. I hear these stories all the time. One strange one, this woman, see, when I'm on the Art Bell and the George Noory show, we get tons of emails when I bring things up like this. And that's where a lot of these stories come from. The one said, she went out to the airport to watch the jets land and take off. She's watching this jet take off and then go backwards, and then go forwards, and then go backwards before it took off. And she, you know, airplanes don't do that. And she'd watched several of them do that. Then she walked out on the street, saw the cars doing the same thing, going forward and going backwards and going forward. And the only thing I could think was that was the juncture point of dimensions, where they weren't solid in one or the other. Have I screwed up your brains enough yet? Okay. Because I know there's going to be a lot of questions, but every time I get these concepts, I write about them and I say, don't ask me to explain them, I'm just telling you what I got. And it's weird. But I think we're going to go into the backdrop people. This came up in my last book. I put it into Convoluted 4. I could go into a lot more strange concepts, and they may come up with the questioning. But in Convoluted 4, I've got this concept of the backdrop people. The reason I've got Guy here is because in his lecture, he talked about backfill people. And I said, wait a minute, that's the same idea, and he never reads my books.
That's right, I don't read any books these days, purely for fear of having contamination from other people's work and it being stuck in my subconscious and then being regurgitated in my own stuff. So I don't touch anybody's books. I haven't for years.
I don't read anybody else's books either, because I don't want to be influenced. But here he's talking about backfill people, and I've got backdrop people. And so I asked him to come up because everybody keeps wanting more information about it. And all I had was what I wrote about. Well, now I'm getting more information because it's coming through more and more people. It's like when the concept is ready, then we get more and more information keeps coming in. They know when I'm ready and I'm supposed to present it to the world. Okay. Well, the idea, nothing is real anyway. Everything is energy. Everything is illusion. This building where you're sitting right now did not even exist until you collectively chose to come here tonight or today. Wrap your head around that. I don't know if that should make sense, because every time I brought that up, they'll say, what? It's like a Stephen King movie they had one time where nothing existed before they got there.
That's right. I mean, what you're doing is you're creating your own realities, and now you've created a huge group reality. And without the huge group reality, this wouldn't exist.
But this shows you, too, how powerful your mind is. Because everything you see, everything that's around you, everything in your life, you're creating and putting there to fill up your world. So that means you can create anything. Nothing is impossible. You can change your life. You can have anything in your life at all. They told me one of the biggest lessons you come to Earth to learn is how to manipulate energy. You can't get out of the Earth school and graduate till you learn how to manipulate energy. What does that mean? Create. You have to learn to create. Because this is how powerful your mind is. You can create anything. So that means every time you go anywhere, even go back to your house, it is recreated every time you go into it. I always wonder, where does it go in the meantime?
It's just space.
Back into whatever. But when these concepts began coming up, you know, it's a little unnerving. But the backdrop people was really scrambled my brain. And everywhere I go now, they'll say, tell us more about the backdrop people. Okay, you're creating, this is your movie. This is your play. You are the, it's all that life is anyways, just a game. It's just a play. It's just an illusion. You're going to leave here with your brains really spinning. Okay. But I've had people say that when they go through the death experience in the past life, they look back and they'll say, it's just a play. I see all the actors on stage getting ready to play their parts. I see the actors in the wings getting ready to come on stage and play their parts. It's just a play. But when I was there, I took it so seriously, but now it's like a blink of an eye. So you are the producer, director, and actor in your own play. You're also the script writer, but the script isn't written. It's written as you go along. So you see, you can change it anytime you want. We get so trapped into thinking there's no way out. Not, you know, that this is all there is. When you realize how powerful your mind is, you can create anything you want. This is the goal, the main thing of being alive is learning how to create. And now when the veil is thinning, we're moving into this new earth, we're into the shifting, we're bringing all these abilities back. This is what you're supposed to learn how to do. Okay, but this is your movie. Now they said, it wouldn't be a very good movie, would it, if you were the only person in the movie? Isn't that true? They said people like people around them. So what we do, we don't know this, none of this is done consciously. You have the backdrop people. When you cast a movie, what do? You cast all these extras, don't you? To fill in the background. The backdrop, he calls them the backfill. You cast all the extras to play all the parts of all the people. Those are the backdrop people. And when I go into a crowded airport now, I'm thinking, oh boy, look at all the backdrop people I've just created. I shouldn't have put so many into this. But this is what makes it even stranger. The backdrop people are not real. They're not real people. They're not anything. They are energy. It's just energy. Everything is energy. That's why I want him to come up here because, come on up, guy. Because when I was asking about him, I said, you got your information your way, I got mine, and we were comparing what we've got because I had so many questions. And now I'm getting more information about it. And so I think everybody here is real. I'm not sure.
Pinch yourselves quickly and see if you are real.
Okay. But I know we're going to have a lot of questions about this concept. They said because you couldn't go through your own movie by yourself. You have to have other people. Now, the people in your life, those are real. Those are the ones that are on the evolutionary path. We have come in to evolve, to grow, to learn lessons, to reincarnate. We're the ones that are evolutionizing. They're real, and you've made these contracts with all these other people, but these other ones are not. And I said, do they have souls? They said, no. They're just energy. They said it's holographic. It's like being on the holodeck on Star Trek. You know, when they're on the holodeck, they interact with these people, they're real, but then the minute they walk off the holodeck, all these people dissipate. And you're getting the same idea, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm getting slightly, just a very slight difference though, because mine's related to the real people. Because as we evolve, we move out of this particular frequency, and therefore there needs to be a critical mass of individuals to allow those who are still needing to move up to operate. And so these backfill people come into play then. So there's two parts to the
well, they said, I said, can they advance? And they said, yes, they can evolve. There's a possibility of that. But they're still not on the evolutionary path that we are on. They're different.
They're a completely different energy set. The energetic genre of mankind is a very high frequency, very high energy. And these guys, they're lower.
Lower, denser energy. Yeah. Earth is the densest, lowest planet in the universe to live on. It's the most difficult planet to live on. When you come here, they said we're at the bottom. They're so dense and heavy. So a lot of these people are made up of that dense energy.
That's right. And the thing is that you can tell them. I mean, clearly,
he's learned to tell them apart. I haven't yet.
I mean, you just tell them. You can, if you go into a shopping mall, for instance, or a football game, or a basketball game, or anywhere with a large group of people, just walk around and look and feel what's going on, and you can spot them a mile away. They stick out. They're not the same energy set. I mean, clearly there's none here.
If you learn how to, if you learn how to feel energy.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's amazing that I found it quite a dichotomy, you know, that I couldn't understand how we could ascend, but how everybody else could exist when there's the population's disappearing one by one and in tens. And then the information came through in meditation in March last year that there's a series of backfill going on where there has to be a critical mass. And I was amazed when Dolores said that it's you know, there's a similar thing going on for creating the necessary environments for us to evolve by maintaining an environment holographically as well. It's amazing.
But me and Julie have had a lot of discussion about this too, and we said, what would happen if I would go up and interact with one of these people? Because you know, you see them talking and all of that. What would happen if I would go up and interact with them? Would they be real? Then I think it goes along with the idea, okay, you've got your movie. Now you suddenly gave to these extras a bit part. They have a little speaking part in the movie. But a lot of times too, when you interact with people, it's the way you interact. You know, sometimes if they need help or you're talking to them like that, that to me is you are helping your own evolvement. maybe you're helping them also.
Yeah, I mean these backfill, the information I've been getting, the backfill people, they also evolve. And they don't get the chance to have individualised free will. So this is, in general, the first time they've incarnated. So when they're working with us, they gain evolutionary content as a result of that. So they're benefiting. They're helping us continue to evolve, and those individuals who are left behind but still evolving by being here and backfilling, basically.
Because also he's found that the ones that are very negative, they're like the bottom. Those are the very low, dense energies. But they're here, all of this is here to teach us something. That's what it's all about. That's what life is all about anyway. What are you learning? Everything that happens to you, you created to learn from it. So you hear about these things on TV, the murders and the violence going on. How does it affect you? What do you learn from that? That's the lesson of these other entities, to teach us something.
And the thing is that in them doing what we abhor, we learn how to not do it. So we naturally move ourselves out of that zone, out of that frequency.
Yeah, they've told me that before, and it was in my book, Between Death and Life, that if you didn't have these as examples, you wouldn't know what not to do from a moral standpoint.
That's right, that's right. And it's important to observe what is considered to be wrong, because there are definitely universal laws being worked with here. And we are shown every day what not to do so that we can avoid it and take a faster track to increasing our frequency and ascend in the process.
Because everybody has bad things that happen in their life, but they have put them there. Before you come into the life, you make your plan, and you make the plan of the events in your life that are going to help you grow. And I have so many clients that have had horrible childhoods and horrible lives, but I always ask them, what did you learn from it? That was the purpose. That's why they put those events in their life, to learn from. And some of them will say, well, I didn't learn anything. It was just a bad experience. Then guess what? According to the law of karma, the law of what we're here for, you have to repeat that class until you learn that lesson. So I tell them, if you learned even one thing from the circumstance, that was the reason for you creating it. Look how powerful your minds are.
I found out that's something called cyclic karma, where if you don't learn the first time, it gets harder the second time, and then it gets harder the third time.
And you're brought back with the same people, same circumstance. You don't get out of anything. Same people, some same circumstances. You just have to repeat it over, and it's always harder the next time. Just like a class in school. So some people will tell me, well, I don't want to have anything to do with that person anymore. I don't want them in my life anymore. I certainly don't want to have to do it again. And I said, you better work it out now. That's the law of karma. See, we've been taking baby steps so far in my books and in the conferences, and now it's getting to where we're beginning to be ready for the hard stuff. We're progressing into college, maybe.
Absolutely. And I just want to very quickly pick up on something that Dolores said about creation and what we're creating here. One of the things I've picked up recently is that we're all part of creating the multiverse, not just this locale here, but we're all creating the multiverse. So think about that when you're starting to create something small, but actually you're part of something much bigger.
Here's a short video on how Dolores Cannon views time and timelines. Thank you for watching.